The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the massive view screen displayed an impossible sight. A ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the terminus system, its hull scarred and modified beyond recognition, but the energy signature was unmistakable. "That's the Endurance," whispered Ambassador Vextar, his 4 eyes widening in disbelief. "The human vessel that disappeared 10 years ago." High Counselor Zephron's crystalline form shimmered with agitation. "Impossible! The Endurance was destroyed when it entered the Void Nebula. No ship has ever returned from that region." The assembled representatives of 47 species watched in stunned silence as the ship slowly approached the outer sensor arrays. What had once been a sleek human exploration vessel now appeared as something else entirely. Additional hull plating covered its surface in angular patterns. Weapon mounts that hadn't existed before jutted from its sides. Energy readings showed power levels that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Endurance, looking out at the space station that housed the Galactic Council. She had dreamed of this moment for 10 long years. Her reflection in the viewport showed the toll those years had taken. Gray streaked her once black hair, and scars marked her face from battles the galaxy couldn't imagine. Behind her, the bridge hummed with technology that shouldn't exist. "Captain," said her first officer, Commander Chen, "we're receiving multiple hail requests. The Council wants to speak with us." Elena nodded slowly. "Open a channel to the Council chambers. Let them see what humanity has become." The view screen in the Council chamber flickered, and Elena's face appeared. The assembled aliens immediately began chattering in dozens of languages. Humans were considered a minor species, barely space-worthy, certainly not capable of surviving where they had been. "High Counselor Zephyron," Elena said, her voice carrying an authority that hadn't been there 10 years ago. "I request permission to dock and address the Council." Zephyron's form shifted colors rapidly, indicating extreme confusion. "Captain Vasquez, but you were declared dead. Your ship entered the Void Nebula and never returned. What happened to you?" Elena's expression remained neutral. "We found something in the void, something the galaxy needs to know about. But first, we need to discuss the Devourers." The chamber erupted in chaos. The Devourers were the galaxy's most closely guarded secret, known only to the highest levels of each government. They were an ancient threat that had wiped out civilizations before recorded history. The fact that a human captain knew about them sent shockwaves through the assembly. "How do you know that name?" Zephyron demanded. "Because we've been fighting them for 10 years, Elena replied calmly, "and we've learned how to kill them." The silence that followed was deafening. For centuries, the galaxy's greatest military minds had concluded that the Devourers were unstoppable. They consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but dead space in their wake. The best strategy was to hide and hope they passed by. Ambassador Vextar leaned forward. "Captain, with respect, no single ship could survive an encounter with the Devourers. They destroyed the combined fleets of the Korthak Empire in minutes." Elena's smile was cold. "That's because the galaxy has been thinking about this problem wrong. You've been trying to fight them with conventional weapons, conventional tactics. Humans don't think conventionally." She gestured to someone off-screen. The bridge of the Endurance became visible, and the alien dignitaries gasped. The technology displayed was unlike anything they had ever seen. Consoles seemed to flow like liquid metal. Energy readings showed power sources that defied known physics. 10 years ago, our ship was pulled into the Void Nebula by what we thought was a gravitational anomaly," Elena continued. "We found the remains of a civilization that had fought the Devourers for 1,000 years before falling. They left behind everything they had learned, every weapon they had developed, every strategy they had tried." Commander Chen stepped into view. "The Builders, as we came to call them, had tried to fight the Devourers with overwhelming force. They built bigger ships, more powerful weapons. It didn't work. The Devourers adapted to everything they threw at them. Elena nodded. But humans think differently. We don't just build bigger guns. We find another way. The council members shifted nervously. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as unpredictable, but this was beyond anything they had expected. "What did you find?" Zephron asked. The builders had discovered that the Devourers weren't just destroying civilizations, Elena explained. They were harvesting them, taking their knowledge, their technology, their very essence, and using it to grow stronger. Every species they consumed made them more powerful. Ambassador Vexatar's translator struggled with the emotional undertones of his voice. If that's true, then they're unstoppable. They've consumed hundreds of civilizations over the millennia. That's what everyone thought, Elena said. But the builders missed something crucial in their final years. They were so focused on fighting the Devourers that they forgot to ask the right question. We didn't. The chamber waited in tense silence. The question isn't how to destroy something that adapts to every weapon, Elena continued. The question is, what happens when it tries to adapt to something that refuses to follow the rules? Commander Chen manipulated controls, and the external view of the Endurance shifted. The hull plating began to shift and flow, revealing glimpses of the technology within. We spent 10 years in the Void Nebula, not just studying builder technology, but making it uniquely human. We took their rigid systems and made them chaotic, their predictable patterns and made them random, their logical approaches and made them intuitive. Elena's expression grew grim. 3 months ago, we detected Devourer scouts entering this galaxy's outer rim. They're coming, and they'll be here within a year. The question is, will you let humanity help you fight them, or will you try to handle this the same way every other civilization has? Zephron's form flickered through several colors before settling on a deep purple that indicated deep thought. Captain Vasquez, even if we believe your claims about fighting the Devourers, humanity represents less than 1% of the galaxy's population. How can your single ship make a difference against a threat that has destroyed empires? Elena's smile returned, and this time it carried a hint of the wild determination that had kept her crew alive for 10 years. Because we're not asking you to follow our lead, Counselor. We're asking you to get out of our way. The view screen showed the Endurance beginning to move toward the station. As it approached, the aliens could see details that defied explanation. The ship's hull seemed to ripple like water. Energy patterns danced across its surface in ways that no known technology could produce. Weapon systems appeared and disappeared as if the ship itself were alive. We've learned something important about humanity in the last 10 years, Elena said. We don't just adapt to survive, we adapt to win. The Devourers have never faced a species that thrives on chaos, that turns disadvantages into strengths, that refuses to accept defeat even when death is certain. Commander Chen added, the builders tried to create perfect weapons. We created something better. We created human weapons. The council chamber buzzed with translations as representatives tried to understand what they were hearing. The concept of human weapons didn't translate well into most languages because it implied something beyond mere technology. Captain, Zephron said carefully, you're asking us to trust the survival of the galaxy to human innovation. Forgive our skepticism, but your species has been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. Elena nodded. You're right to be skeptical. But consider this. Every other species that faced the Devourers had millions of years to prepare. They had vast fleets, incredible technology, ancient wisdom, and they all failed. She paused, letting that sink in. Humans had 10 years, 1 ship, and the wreckage of a dead civilization. And we're still here. The Endurance continued its approach to the station. As it drew closer, the aliens could see crew members moving about through transparent sections of the hull. They appeared human, but something was different about them. They moved with a precision and confidence that seemed almost inhuman. "What happened to your crew?" Ambassador Vextar asked. Elena's expression softened slightly. "The same thing that happened to the ship. We adapted. The Void Nebula changes everything it touches. The Builder's technology changed us, just as we changed it. We're still human, but we're human enhanced by 10 years of preparation for a war the galaxy doesn't think it can win." Zephran's form shifted to a concerned orange. "Enhanced how?" "Our reflexes are faster. Our minds process information more quickly. We can interface directly with our ship's systems. The boundary between crew and vessel has become flexible." Commander Chen demonstrated by placing his hand on what appeared to be a blank section of wall. The surface responded instantly, flowing around his fingers and displaying complex data streams. "We've learned to think like our ship thinks, to react as it reacts. The Devourers adapt to individual threats, but they've never faced a threat that's truly unified." The implications of what they were seeing began to sink in among the council members. Humans had not just survived impossible odds. They had transformed themselves into something new. "The Devourers are coming," Elena said with finality. "Your fleets won't stop them. Your weapons won't destroy them. Your strategies won't outmaneuver them. But we can." She looked directly into the camera, and her enhanced eyes seemed to pierce through the view screen to look at each council member individually. "The question is, when they arrive and your perfect formations crumble, when your advanced weapons fail, when your ancient wisdom proves useless, will you be ready to try the human way?" The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Outside the massive windows, the Endurance continued its approach, no longer just a returned ship, but a herald of humanity's transformation and perhaps the galaxy's only hope. 3 weeks had passed since the Endurance docked at Council Station, and the galaxy's military commanders remained deeply divided. Half believed Captain Vasquez was delusional, claiming impossible victories against an unstoppable enemy. The other half worried she might be telling the truth. Admiral Torvin of the Hegemony Fleet paced the observation deck, watching human crew members work on their ship through the transparent docking tube. The modifications they were making defied explanation. Hull sections flowed like liquid, reforming into new configurations hourly. Weapon systems appeared to grow rather than being installed. "They're changing the ship while we watch," he muttered to his aide. "No species modifies a vessel that extensively without months in dry dock." His aide, a young Zephyrian named Kiltar, consulted his datapad. "Sir, our sensors can't even identify half the materials they're using. The energy signatures keep shifting." Through the tube's transparent walls, they watched Commander Chen interface directly with a section of hull plating. Where his hands touched, the metal became transparent, revealing complex systems underneath. Other crew members moved with an eerie coordination, as if they shared a single mind. "Have you ever seen anything like it, sir?" Kiltar asked. Before Admiral Torvin could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The red alert klaxon sent personnel running to battle stations across all 47 member fleets. High Counselor Zephyron's voice echoed through the communication system. "All fleet commanders report to the war room immediately. Long-range sensors have detected an unknown formation approaching from the galactic rim." In the Endurance modified bridge, Captain Elena Vasquez felt the alarm through her neural connection to the ship's systems before she heard it audibly. Her enhanced awareness processed the incoming data streams faster than any computer. "Chen, what's our tactical assessment?" she asked without turning around. Commander Chen didn't need to check any displays. The information flowed directly into his consciousness from the ship's sensors. "Devourer Scout Fleet. 12 vessels, medium class. They're testing our defenses, seeing how we respond to a limited threat. Elena nodded. Classic devourer strategy. They probe, they learn, they adapt. Then they return with exactly the right force to counter whatever they observed. Lieutenant Martinez, whose enhancement allowed her to monitor all Council communications simultaneously, looked up from her station. "Captain, the Council fleets are mobilizing. Standard defensive formation around the station." Elena's expression grew grim. "They're going to get slaughtered." Within minutes, the war room filled with military leaders from across the galaxy. Holographic displays showed the approaching Devourer fleet. Their ships unlike anything in the Council databases. They moved with perfect coordination, their formations shifting like a living organism. Admiral Torvin studied the tactical display. 12 ships against our combined fleet of over 300. The numbers are in our favor. "Numbers don't matter against the Devourers," Elena said as she entered the war room. The assembled commanders turned to stare at the human captain. "They'll analyze every weapon you fire, every maneuver you make, every communication you send. By the time you realize you're losing, they'll have adapted to everything you have." Fleet Commander Vextal of the Korthak military scoffed. "Human, my people have been warriors for 10,000 years. We know how to fight." Elena met his gaze calmly. "How did that work out against them before?" The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew the Korthak Empire's fate, but it was rarely spoken of directly. "What do you propose?" Zephyron asked. Elena activated her own holographic display, showing the Endurance's position relative to the approaching fleet. "Let us handle the scouts. Your fleet stay back and observe. Don't engage, don't target, don't even power up your weapons until it's over." Admiral Torvin stepped forward. "One ship against 12? That's suicide." Elena's smile was cold. "That's exactly what they want you to think." 2 hours later, the Endurance moved away from the station, leaving the massive Council fleet in defensive positions. Elena could feel the doubts and fears of thousands of alien minds through the collective consciousness that now connected her crew to their ship. "Captain," Chen said, "the Devourers are beginning their scanning sequence. They're analyzing our hull composition, energy signatures, and weapon configurations." "Good. Let them look." Elena's hands moved across controls that seemed to reshape themselves under her touch. "Martinez, begin Phase 1. Lieutenant Martinez's consciousness merged with the ship's stealth systems. Suddenly, the Endurance began to flicker on enemy sensors. Not invisible, but unstable, as if the ship couldn't maintain cohesion. On the Devourer flagship, biomechanical systems processed the incoming data. The human vessel appeared to be malfunctioning, its energy patterns chaotic and unpredictable. Analysis protocols attempted to categorize the threat level. Result: minimal threat. Vessel appears damaged and unstable. The Devourer fleet adjusted formation, treating the approaching ship as a minor obstacle rather than a legitimate threat. "They're taking the bait," Chen reported. "Reducing combat readiness, focusing on the station." Elena nodded. "Phase 2. Show them what they expect to see." The Endurance's weapon systems came online, but not as they truly existed. Instead, the ship projected holographic representations of standard human weaponry. Missile launchers, plasma cannons, energy beams, all technology the Devourers had encountered and adapted to countless times before. The enemy fleet's analysis systems immediately began developing countermeasures, energy shields calibrated to deflect known human weapons. Armor configurations optimized against expected damage types. Tactical algorithms prepared to exploit anticipated human weaknesses. On Council Station, Admiral Torvin watched the displays in growing horror. "The human ship is powering up primitive weapons. Those systems won't even scratch Devourer hulls." "Perhaps we should intervene," suggested Fleet Commander Vextal, though his voice lacked conviction. Zephyron studied the tactical display. Something about the Endurance's approach seemed wrong. No experienced captain would attack superior forces with outdated weapons. Wait, let's see what the humans are really planning. The distance between fleets closed rapidly. The Devourers moved with perfect precision, their ships coordinating in ways that no conventional fleet could match. They had learned from millions of battles, absorbed the tactical knowledge of countless civilizations. "Contact in 30 seconds, Chen announced. Elena's hands moved to controls that existed only when she needed them, the ship's systems flowing around her enhanced nervous system. All hands, neural link. The crew of the Endurance joined their consciousness with the ship itself. Individual awareness merged into something greater, a hybrid intelligence that was simultaneously human and machine, organic and artificial. "Weapons ready," Martinez reported, though no conventional weapons were visible on the ship's hull. "Defense systems optimal," added Engineering Officer Park, whose enhancements allowed him to monitor every molecule of the ship's adaptive armor. The Devourer fleet opened fire first, their weapons precisely calibrated to destroy the human vessel quickly and efficiently. Energy beams lanced out, followed by seeker missiles and plasma charges. Every shot passed harmlessly through the Endurance. The ship had become translucent, phasing between dimensions in ways that defied the Devourer's understanding of physics. Their sensors registered hits, but no damage. Their tactical computers struggled to process contradictory data. "Phase 3, Elena whispered, her voice carrying through the neural link to every crew member and every ship system simultaneously. The Endurance solidified again, but it was no longer the same ship. Hull configurations had shifted into geometries that shouldn't have been possible. Weapon systems emerged from folded space, drawing energy from sources that didn't appear on any scanner. Elena felt the ship's new weapons charging, each one unique, each one designed in real time to exploit specific weaknesses in the Devourer fleet's defenses. The first human weapon fired. It wasn't energy or matter, but pure information, a data virus that infiltrated the lead Devourer ship's consciousness and convinced it that reality was different than it appeared. The ship's systems began to cannibalize themselves, its crew turning weapons on their own vessel as they perceived threats that didn't exist. The second weapon was temporal, aging sections of enemy hulls by centuries in microseconds. Advanced armor became brittle and cracked. Sophisticated systems degraded into useless scrap. The third weapon was psychological, broadcasting human concepts of individuality directly into the Devourer hive mind. For the first time in their existence, individual Devourer units began to question their collective purpose, creating chaos in their perfect coordination. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Torvin as he watched the battle unfold. "Those weapons shouldn't exist." The Devourers tried to adapt, their ships reconfiguring to counter the new threats, but each adaptation revealed new vulnerabilities, and the Endurance exploited them instantly. The human ship moved like a living thing, its consciousness distributed throughout its structure, anticipating enemy moves before they were made. In the span of minutes, 8 of the 12 Devourer ships had been destroyed or disabled. The remaining 4 attempted to retreat, but the Endurance pursued relentlessly. Elena's awareness expanded beyond her physical form, encompassing the ship's entire sensor network. She could feel the terror of the Devourer crews as they encountered something they couldn't understand or adapt to. For beings that had conquered the galaxy through perfect adaptation, facing something that refused to follow predictable patterns was their ultimate nightmare. The final Devourer ship exploded in a burst of exotic energy as its power systems overloaded, unable to process the contradictory commands flooding its systems. Silence fell across the tactical display. 12 Devourer ships destroyed by one human vessel in under 10 minutes. Elena's consciousness slowly returned to her physical body as the Endurance turned back toward Council Station. The neural link remained active but dimmed to levels that allowed individual thought. Chen, casualties? She asked. None, Captain. The ship performed flawlessly. Elena nodded, feeling the satisfaction of her crew through their shared connection, but she also felt something else, the attention of something vast and alien watching from the galactic rim. The real fleet is coming, she said quietly. That was just the appetizer. On Council Station, the assembled military leaders stared at their displays in stunned silence. The impossible had happened. Humans had not only survived an encounter with the Devourers, but had achieved a complete victory. How? Admiral Torvin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zephyron's crystalline form shifted through several colors before settling on deep gold, the color of revelation. I believe we're about to find out. The human ship is requesting permission to dock. As the Endurance approached the station, the watching aliens could see that it had changed again. The ship that returned was subtly different from the one that had left, as if the battle itself had caused it to evolve. Elena stood on her bridge, looking out at the Council fleet. 300 ships representing the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, and all of them were obsolete. Captain, Martinez said, her enhanced awareness picking up massive gravitational disturbances at the galaxy's edge. I'm detecting the main Devourer fleet. Estimated time of arrival, 6 days. Elena's reflection in the viewport showed her human features overlaid with the geometric patterns of alien enhancement. She was still recognizably human, but she was also something more. 6 days, she repeated. Time enough to teach the galaxy how to fight like humans. The real battle was about to begin. 6 days passed faster than anyone expected. The galaxy's greatest military minds worked around the clock, trying to understand human tactical doctrine well enough to implement it. The results were mixed at best. Admiral Torvin stood in the Endurance's modified briefing room, his head spinning from the tactical display Elena had just shown him. The holographic battle scenarios defied everything he knew about warfare. You're asking me to have my ships fire on each other, he said incredulously. Elena nodded patiently. Not to damage them, to confuse the Devourer's targeting systems. They expect enemies to protect themselves and attack others. When the same ship is simultaneously attacking and defending, their analysis systems crash trying to categorize the threat. Commander Chen pulled up another tactical display. The key is unpredictability within controlled chaos. Your ships need to look like they're fighting randomly while actually following a deeper pattern that only emerges over time. Fleet Commander Vexatal shook his massive head. My warriors don't fight randomly. We fight with honor, with precision, with predictability, Elena interrupted. Which is why your empire fell to the Devourers. The briefing room fell silent. Speaking so bluntly about the Korthak defeat was considered deeply inappropriate, but Elena had no time for diplomatic niceties. I understand your pride in your military traditions, she continued, but the Devourers have analyzed every traditional military strategy in the galaxy. They know how honorable warriors fight. They know how precise fleets maneuver. They're counting on you to be yourselves. Lieutenant Martinez looked up from her station. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting massive gravitational disturbances. The main fleet is dropping out of hyperspace. Elena's expression grew grim. How many? 1,200 ships, various classes, but all significantly larger than the scout fleet. The alien commanders exchanged worried looks. 1,200 Devourer ships represented the largest force they had ever assembled in one place. Elena activated the station-wide communication system. All fleet commanders, this is Captain Vasquez. The enemy is here. You have 30 minutes to reach your assigned positions. Remember what we've practiced. Trust in chaos, find strength in confusion, and above all else, think like humans. Admiral Torvin looked at the tactical display showing the Council fleet's planned formation. Ships were grouped in seemingly random clusters with no clear command structure or defensive line. Everything his military training told him was wrong. "This will never work," he muttered. Elena heard him through her enhanced senses. "You're right. It shouldn't work. That's exactly why it will." The main view screen in the station's command center showed the approaching Devourer fleet. Their ships moved in perfect formation, a dark tide of biomechanical death sweeping across space. Each vessel was a work of terrible art, crafted from the absorbed technologies of countless fallen civilizations. High Counselor Zephyron's crystalline form flickered between colors as stress patterns ran through his structure. "Captain Vasquez, are you certain about this strategy? Our entire fleet is depending on tactics we've had less than a week to learn." Elena stood before the massive display, her enhanced awareness processing thousands of data streams simultaneously. Through her neural link with the Endurance, she could monitor every ship in the Council fleet, feeling their crew's fear and confusion like physical sensations. "Counselor, conventional strategies gave the Devourers 1,000 victories. Unconventional thinking gave humanity 1. I'll take those odds." The Devourer fleet reached optimal firing range and immediately began their analysis protocols. Scanner beams swept across the defending ships, categorizing weapons, armor configurations, and tactical positions. Their collective consciousness processed the data with frightening efficiency. The results confused them. The Council fleet's formation made no strategic sense. Some ships faced the enemy, others pointed in seemingly random directions. Weapon systems were powered at different levels with no apparent pattern. Communication chatter between ships seemed chaotic and contradictory. Elena watched the enemy fleet's uncertainty through the Endurance's sensors. "They're trying to understand us. Beginning standard analysis procedures. Martinez, initiate Phase 1. Across the Council fleet, human technical advisors who had spent the last week integrating with alien ship systems began implementing the first stage of Elena's plan. Weapons that appeared to malfunction fired in the wrong directions. Ships that seemed damaged suddenly performed impossible maneuvers. Communications that sounded like panicked confusion contained hidden coordination codes. The Devourers attempted to exploit what appeared to be obvious weaknesses. Their first wave attack targeted ships that seemed isolated and defenseless, but as their weapons reached their targets, those ships vanished from sensors only to reappear behind the Devourer formation. "How are they doing that?" demanded Admiral Torvin, watching his own ships perform maneuvers he hadn't authorized. "Human advisors are linked with your navigation systems," Chen explained. "They're using our phasing technology on a fleet-wide scale." The Devourer fleet tried to adapt, reconfiguring their formation to account for the unpredictable enemy movements. But every adaptation revealed new impossibilities. Ships that had been firing primitive energy weapons suddenly unleashed exotic particle beams. Vessels that appeared heavily damaged launched fresh waves of fighters. Elena felt the moment when the Devourer collective consciousness began to fracture. For beings that relied on perfect information and logical adaptation, facing an enemy that operated on controlled chaos was like trying to solve an equation where the numbers kept changing. "Phase 2, Elena commanded. The real human weapons came online. The Endurance had spent 6 days manufacturing specialized systems for each ship in the Council fleet. Not copies of human weapons, but hybrids that combined alien technology with human unpredictability. A Korthak battleship's energy cannons suddenly fired beams of crystallized time. A Zephyrian cruiser's missile systems launched projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Devourer fleet's perfect coordination began to break down. Ships that had moved as one mind for millennia started making individual decisions as their shared consciousness struggled to process contradictory data. Some vessels retreated while others advanced. Some powered up weapons while others lowered shields. Elena watched the chaos with satisfaction, but she knew the real test was coming. The Devourers had one final adaptation protocol, used only when all other options failed. "Captain," Martinez warned, "they're activating convergence mode." Elena nodded grimly. "Here we go. All ships, prepare for the final phase." The Devourer fleet suddenly stopped moving. Every ship powered down all systems except life support and core consciousness links. They were preparing to merge into a single superorganism, combining their individual strengths into one unstoppable entity. "They're going to form a unified ship," Chen observed, "all 1,200 vessels merging into one massive construct." Elena felt the fear rippling through the Council fleet as they watched the Devourer ships begin to physically connect. Hull plating flowed like liquid, creating bridges between vessels. Weapon systems combined into massive arrays. The collective consciousness expanded to encompass the entire formation. "That's impossible," Admiral Torvin breathed. "A ship that size would collapse under its own gravitational field." "Not if it exists partially outside normal space-time," Elena replied. "The Devourer's final form transcends physical limitations." The merged Devourer construct was a nightmare of organic technology and absorbed civilizations. Weapons from 100 different species jutted from its hull. Energy signatures showed power levels that should have torn apart local space. "Captain," Zephron's voice carried defeat, "how do we fight something like that?" Elena's smile was fierce. "The same way humans have always won impossible battles. We cheat." She activated the Endurance Final System, one that had required 6 days of preparation and every resource the ship could spare. "All ships, linked to our command matrix. This is going to get strange." Across the Council fleet, every vessel's consciousness briefly merged with the Endurance's hybrid human-alien intelligence. For a moment, 300 ships and their crews shared a single awareness that encompassed both organic intuition and machine logic. The sensation was overwhelming for the alien crews. They suddenly understood how humans thought, how they found patterns in chaos and strength in apparent weakness. More importantly, they felt what it was like to be truly unpredictable. The unified fleet turned toward the massive Devourer construct and attacked with weapons that should never have existed. Time-shifted torpedoes that aged their targets by millennia before impact. Dimensional cannons that fired through folded space to strike from impossible angles. Information viruses that convinced enemy systems they were fighting themselves. But the most devastating weapon was the fleet itself. 300 ships moving with shared consciousness while maintaining individual unpredictability. The Devourer construct's sensors registered simultaneous unity and chaos, collective coordination and random action. The result was cognitive overload on a massive scale. The Devourer's superorganism tried to process the contradictory data and failed. Its consciousness, designed to adapt to any logical threat, encountered something that was simultaneously logical and illogical, unified and chaotic, predictable and random. Elena felt the moment when the Devourer mind broke. The massive construct began to tear itself apart as individual ship components received contradictory commands from the failing collective consciousness. Weapon systems fired on their own hulls. Navigation systems initiated impossible courses. Life support systems confused enemy and friendly designations. In minutes, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known destroyed itself, trying to understand humanity. The silence that followed was deafening. 1,200 Devourer ships floated dead in space, their collective consciousness permanently shattered by contact with human thinking patterns. Elena disconnected from the fleet-wide neural link and returned to her physical awareness. Around her, the Endurance's bridge crew slowly emerged from their own expanded consciousness states. "Status report," she said quietly. "All Council ships report minimal damage," Martinez replied. "No casualties. The enemy fleet is completely disabled." Elena nodded, feeling the weight of what they had accomplished. Humanity had not just survived their first real test on the galactic stage, they had saved the galaxy itself. On Council Station, the assembled representatives sat in stunned silence. Admiral Torvin stared at the tactical display showing the disabled Devourer fleet. "How?" he asked for the second time in a week. Elena's voice came through the communication system, carrying a warmth that hadn't been there before. "Because you learned to think like humans, Admiral. You found strength in chaos, unity in discord, victory in impossibility." High Counselor Zephron's form shifted to brilliant gold. "Captain Vasquez, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally request that humanity consider membership in our assembly." Elena laughed, a sound that carried pure human joy through the communication system. "Counselor, I think it's time for the galaxy to consider membership in humanity's vision of the future. The Endurance slowly turned away from the battlefield, its mission complete but its journey just beginning. Behind it, the disabled Devourer ships would be studied and eventually converted into tools for peace rather than weapons of destruction. Elena stood on her bridge, looking out at the stars with enhanced vision that could see farther than any human had ever seen before. Her crew moved around her with the easy coordination of minds that had touched something greater than themselves. "Chen, set course for the galactic core," she commanded. "It's time to show the rest of the galaxy what humans can do when we're not holding back." The ship began to move, carrying with it the seeds of a new age. An age where humanity's greatest strength, the ability to find hope in hopelessness, to create order from chaos, to turn every disadvantage into an opportunity, would reshape the galaxy forever. Behind them, the Council fleet followed, no longer a collection of separate military forces, but the beginning of something unprecedented. A truly unified galactic defense force that had learned to think like humans while maintaining the best of their own traditions. The Devourers were finished. The real adventure was just beginning.